Oh my God, Clemson was horrible last year, right? Just absolutely terrible. They fell off a cliff. The run is over. Clemson is a dead program, right? No, not really. They went 10-3. 95% of the teams in America would kill to go 10-3, but of course we're not talking about 95% of teams in America. We're talking about Clemson here. It is funny though to listen to fans of teams who can barely make a bowl game talk about how quote unquote bad Clemson was last year when they went 10-3. 10-3 is only bad because of the streak that Clemson has been on prior to that, right? I mean, you're talking about a team that's won 6 straight ACC titles and made 6 straight trips to the playoffs, winning 2 national titles all in the last 6 years. So was it a down year for Clemson? Yeah, 10-3 was a down year for Clemson only because they've been winning 13, 14, and 15 games a year for the last 6 years. 10-3 for most teams would be amazing. Clemson is not a terrible team. The run is not over. They're not a dead program. They had some issues last year. I think we all know that, and we'll talk about some of those issues and whether or not they've been fixed heading into this season. In today's video, we're going to do a preview and a game-by-game prediction for the Clemson Tigers. But good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, live on LouTube for you. Yeah, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Also, in addition to that as well, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year. Some of them are watchable, some aren't. That determination will be left up to you, the viewer. But yeah, I am going to put Clemson's schedule up on the screen in this video and go through it game by game, and I'm going to give you a winner and a loser for every single game. It's one thing to try to pick a team's record, right? It's another thing to try to figure out exactly which games they're going to lose, if any at all. That's what we're going to attempt to do in today's video. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the offense, a little bit of time talking about the defense, a little bit of time talking about some coaching changes. Then we'll throw the schedule up and go from there. All right, Dabo Swinney, right, head coach, Clemson. 2 brand new coordinators this year, an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. Both the coordinators from last year who were there for a long time left and took head coaching jobs. Brent Venables at Oklahoma, Elliott at, was it Virginia? Virginia or Virginia Tech, whichever one it was. Anyway, so 2 new coordinators for Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers. They promoted from within. So, instead of going out and maybe doing some type of a search, Dabo decided to promote from within. We'll see whether or not that works out or not. But obviously, when you change any of the one coordinators, never mind both, that's going to present some questions, right, heading into this season. Now, I don't think we're going to see any major differences on Clemson philosophically or from a game planning perspective or point of view, right, because they promoted from within. And Dabo Swinney still at the top there in charge. So will there be some bumps in the road with the new coordinators? Maybe, but a lot of that kind of stuff I think can get worked out in the spring and now summer and fall camp and practice heading into the start of the season. And like I said, it's not like these are 2 new coaches that the players didn't know. These coordinators were promoted from within, so familiarity, the terminology, the language, the playbook should primarily stay the same. So I don't really think there's going to be that big of an issue with the coordinator changes at Clemson. Now, these coordinators may or may not end up being as good of an offensive and defensive coordinator as the 2 that they lost. There's no way to know that. They may end up being better. I mean, we just don't know. But obviously, Dabo trusts them. They've both been on the staff for a long time, and he promoted them up and made them coordinators. So 2 new coordinators. But when you talk about Clemson, really you're talking about the offense last year, right? These were the struggles. I mean, yeah, they went 10-3. Their defense really was not an issue. Clemson's defense was good last year, and it's probably going to be even better this year. We'll talk about the defense in a few minutes. Clemson's issues obviously were all on the offensive side of the ball last year, right? Obvious quarterback issues with DJ Uiagalelei. Yes, I know how to say his name. I just call him the ukulele because it's fun. But the ukulele did not play well. The offensive line did not play well at all. And they were hurt really bad by injuries at both wide receiver and running back. So they've got some issues to work out offensively. There's no doubt about it. But some of these people that are running around acting like Clemson is the worst team on earth because they went 10-3 last year and lost a couple of coordinators, I mean, I really don't know what to tell you. I don't know if you haven't been paying attention or what. I mean, Clemson has been consistently recruiting at the top of the ACC and top 5, top 10 nationally for years. They're loaded with talent on both sides of the ball. Dabo Swinney has proven whether you like him or not. And trust me, I've got my own set of issues with Dabo Swinney. I don't like the crybaby routines that he does. I don't like You win 2 national championships, then you come out and you give a poor, pitiful Clemson speech. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I've got my own issues with DABO Swinney, but you can't deny that the guy's a hell of a football coach. He's either the second or third best coach in all of America right now, depending on how you want to rank your coaches. But the point is, there's 130 coaches, and he's better than at least 127 of them. At least at this point in his career, right? You can't deny the results. 6 straight ACC titles, 6 straight appearances in the playoffs, 2 national titles. Again, all that coming in the last 6 years. He's been there 10, 12 years now. Had a few rough years in the beginning, turned it around, starting really around 2012, 2013, building up to the 2016 national title, and then, of course, again in 2018 with Trevor Lawrence, a second national title for DABO Swinney. So the results speak for themselves. Clemson is going to be a really, really good team again this year. The questions, like we talked about, offense. So can the ukulele get a lot better? Because we're not talking about a little bit better here. We're talking about a lot better. Listen to some of these numbers. Listen to some of these numbers from Clemson's offense last year in general, and the ukulele in particular. Completed 55% of his passes. That is not good in today's college football. Your elite level quarterbacks are completing upwards of 65, 70% of their passes. The ukulele was at 55% last year, which was 98th nationally. That's just horrible. 103 nationally in yards per game. That's horrible, right? He had more interceptions than he had touchdowns. He threw 10 touchdowns, or he threw 10 interceptions and only threw 9 touchdowns. Do you know how hard it is to only throw 9 touchdowns in a season in modern college football? I mean, Georgia, Lord knows the quarterback issues we've had over the years. And I mean, God, they're very well documented on this channel. Georgia even throws for 27, 28, 29 touchdowns a year. To have a quarterback only throw for 9 touchdowns in an entire season, a 5-star quarterback at Clemson, is unacceptable. I mean, it's just absolutely pitiful. So, yeah, the quarterback play's got to get a lot better. Can he get better? Well, I think he can. Why? Well, he was better the year before. I mean, one of the reasons people were so high on Clemson heading into last season, even though they were losing Trevor Lawrence, was because we had seen DJ start 2 games the year before, and in those 2 games, he played great. One was on the road at Notre Dame, one was at home against, I think, Boston College. But in those 2 games, he threw for like over 800 yards, completed a high percentage of passes, lots of touchdowns, very little, few interceptions. He played great. So there was reason to be optimistic and reason to think that DJ was going to be the next in what had become a great line of Clemson quarterbacks, going really all the way back to Taj Boyd 7 or 8 years ago, but specifically Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. And then, DJ was going to be the next in line there. And clearly last year, for whatever reason, it just didn't come together. He appeared to regress from 2020 to 2021. So he's got to get a lot better. That's stating the obvious. The offensive line has got to get a lot better. Now, you returned 4 starters on the offensive line, so that's good because all of those guys have now another year of experience, right? The bad thing is, they were not that good last year. So it's great to have experience, but they've got to play a lot better as a unit this year, obviously, than they did last year. Now, running back, I think, is the strength of this team. They returned their top 3 running backs from last year, including, of course, Will Shipley, who expectations are through the roof for him. Again, these people have to stay healthy. Wide receiver, I don't think Clemson has the stable of wide receivers that they have had in years past. That's not to say that they don't have any good wide receivers. They do. I really like Ngata. He's played really well at times, has made some great catches. He's got size. He's a really, really good wide receiver with a lot of potential. And there's a lot of young, talented wide receivers on the roster at Clemson that, we may not know their names off the top of our head because they haven't played a lot. But again, go back and check the recruiting rankings. Clemson does not have a problem recruiting elite wide receivers. And then you have the backup quarterback situation, right? Klubnik, is that his name? Is it Cole or Cade? I always get it confused. Well, let's go with, should we do Cole or Cade today? We'll do Cole. Y'all can let me know if that's right or wrong. Again, I don't really care. It's not my job to, I didn't name these people. So it's just my job to say their name wrong. So whether it's Cole or Cade, I don't know. Cole Klubnik, is that his name? Well, he's the backup, and, a lot of fans are clamoring to see him. And what do we know about DABO Swinney in terms of quarterbacks and playing true freshman quarterbacks and even benching starting quarterbacks? Well, we know he's not afraid to do it. If you go back to 2018, which was Trevor Lawrence's freshman year, right? Kelly Bryant was the returning starter. In 2017, Kelly Bryant had taken Clemson to the playoffs. Now, they lost in the first round to Alabama, but nevertheless, Kelly Bryant led Clemson to the playoffs in 2017. In 2018, Kelly Bryant got the start in week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4, but Trevor Lawrence played a lot in all 4 of those games, and by game 5, DABO made the switch, benched Kelly Bryant, went with Trevor Lawrence. The rest is history. They won a national title. They were undefeated that season, right? So Dabo Swinney is not afraid to bench a starting QB for a talented true freshman if he thinks that true freshman is ready to go. So I wouldn't be surprised at all, and I'll talk a little bit more about this when we pull the schedule up, and you'll see why, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Klubnik get some playing time early in the season, especially if the offense is struggling. And not necessarily just because DJ is playing bad or has bad numbers. But DJ could potentially be playing well and the offense still just struggling for whatever reason. I would not be surprised at all to see Dabo put the true freshman in early in the season and try to figure out what he can do. But anyway, so the offense obviously has got to play better than last year if Clemson wants to get back to the playoffs. Clemson is still the most talented team in the ACC. It's really not even that close right now. And they're the best team in the ACC, and they should win the ACC for what will be the 7th time in the last 8 years at this point. They won it 6 years in a row, didn't win it last year. They're the favorite. ACC Media Days just wrapped up. They're the overwhelming favorite to win the ACC again. They've got the coaching, and the talent, and the depth to do it. The offense is going to have to improve. That offensive line is going to have to play a lot better and stay healthy. The quarterback, whether it's DJ Uiagalelei or Klubnik, is going to have to get, they're going to have to get much better production from the quarterback position than what they got last year. That's just stating the obvious. Now, you look over on the defensive side of the ball, hard to find any problems over there. This might be the best defense in the country this year. It's definitely the best defensive line. Listen to some of these names. Dabo Swinney had a quote, I think it was in, it seems like it was in the spring, maybe right after spring practice or during spring practice. Dabo Swinney thinks there's going to be seven Clemson defensive linemen drafted in next year's draft. Just defensive linemen. But listen to some of these names. Miles Murphy, Xavier Thomas, KJ Henry, Justin Maskell, right? That's just the defensive ends. Defensive tackles, Tyler Davis, Brian Breesy, probably a first-round pick there. Clemson's front is absolutely ridiculous. It is definitely the best defensive line in all of college football. Now, at the linebacker position, they do have some changes there. They lose James Skalski, who has been at Clemson since about 1990, it seems like. The guy's been there forever, affectionately referred to around here as neck roll. If you've ever watched me live stream any games on Saturdays when Clemson happens to be on, you know, we refer to him as neck roll around here. But anyway, he's gone. Was he great? No, but he was consistent and he was really, really good. I doubt he's not going to be a superstar in the NFL or anything like that. He didn't even get drafted. He picked up as a free agent. And look, I hope he makes the team. I don't have any hard feelings towards him. My point is, he might not be great. Maybe he wasn't an All-American first-round draft pick or whatever, but he was really, really good for a long time. So you've got to replace not only a really good player, but somebody that had a ton of experience, a captain of the defense, the leader of the defense for the last couple of years he was there. You have to replace him on the inside. Now, they're moving one of the guys they had last year on the outside. They're moving him to inside linebacker to try to help. I really don't have any concerns about Clemson's linebackers. Besides losing Skalski, okay, great. Clemson's going to be fine at the linebacker position. If you're looking and you really have to strain to find a weakness on Clemson's defense, maybe the secondary is a little slow to come around. They lost, 3 corners last year, including Andrew Booth. All the 3 really good corners they lost off of last year's team. So, again, it's sort of like the wide receiver situation. There's a lot of young, talented defensive backs on Clemson's roster. It's just we don't know who they are yet because they haven't played that much, because they were behind some really, really talented guys. So, again, I think Clemson's secondary is going to be fine. But if you're, trying to be pessimistic or you're looking for a quote-unquote weakness on Clemson's defense, it's definitely not the defensive line. I don't think they're going to have any issues at linebacker, although they do have some pieces to replace. The secondary is really the only thing you could point to there. So we'll see how that goes. Let's put Clemson's schedule up on the screen, and we'll try to figure out what kind of record are they going to have in 2022. Clemson fans, of course, desperately want to get back to the playoffs, To do that, they're going to have to make their way through an ACC schedule and a couple of, one difficult non-con game, and then, of course, the South Carolina game at the end of the year. But they also draw Notre Dame, which is a non-con game, right, the way it works in the ACC. Notre Dame does have to play 4 or 5 ACC teams a year, but they're not considered conference games because Notre Dame's too chicken shit to join a conference. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole today. All right, Clemson's going to start things off with a conference game on the road at Georgia Tech, and technically, I guess this is a neutral site game. I mean, this is just getting completely out of hand. Why does this game need to be played at Mercedes-Benz Stadium? I get it. It's on Monday. It's the Labor Day game this year. Georgia Tech is in Atlanta. They have a stadium. Why is this being played? I don't want to get started on the whole thing with neutral site games either. I can't stand them. But anyway, Clemson opens up with a conference game on the road at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech should blow them out. Now, this was when, if you remember the Clemson-Georgia Tech game last year, this was the point in the season where people really sat back and went, okay, something's wrong here with Clemson's offense. You remember they played Georgia in week 1, and that was kind of a weird game for both teams. Georgia ended up winning that game 10-3. And Georgia didn't score an offensive touchdown either. They had a pick six, was the only touchdown in the game. Georgia scored on a pick six. Other than that, it was a couple of field goals. Georgia won 10-3. People are thinking, well, first game of the season, jitters, defenses, maybe a little bit ahead of the offenses because it's early in the year. Plus, these are two really good defenses, blah, blah, blah. Well, that turned out to sort of be the case for Georgia, but not necessarily for Clemson because they played Georgia Tech a week or two later. And the offense was absolutely horrible. I believe it was 2 weeks later. Maybe they played they may have played a non-con game in week 2 and then played Georgia. Anyway, it was early in the season, and their offense was absolutely horrible against Georgia Tech, which was one of the worst teams on planet Earth last year. I think they went 3-9. Well, I know they went 3-9 because they always go 3-9 with Jeff Collins. They can't win more games than that, and they're not going to win more games than that this year either because they're hot doo-doo. Clemson will win this game. If at halftime Clemson's offense doesn't look a million times better than it looked last year, I would be extremely concerned if I was a Clemson fan. And I'm just being honest. And I know you're going to say, well, yeah, it's week 1. I get it. I get all that. But you've got an entire offseason to prepare for one of the worst teams in the ACC in Georgia Tech. If, for example, the ukulele comes out and only completes 50% of his passes, if Clemson, only completes 25% of their third down conversions, if they only score 10 or 13 points even in the first half against Georgia Tech, these would all be reasons for concern if I was a Clemson fan. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Clemson's going to blow Georgia Tech out. And Georgia Tech, although they're a terrible team, at least this is a conference game you're opening with. It's a Power 5 opponent. So you'll be able to get some idea of what this offense is going to look like, right? It's not like you're playing, James Madison or the Citadel or whoever else, one of these FCS teams or whatever, and you beat them 50-0, but really that doesn't tell you anything, right? I mean, you beat one of those teams 50-0, that doesn't necessarily mean you're good, bad, or anywhere in between. You don't really know when you play somebody like that. Georgia Tech, even though they're horrible, it's a conference opponent, it's a Power 5 team. Clemson should know by halftime of this game if the majority of their offensive problems have been worked out and fixed over the offseason. Is DJ playing a lot better? Do we see Cole Klubnik in the first half of this game? I think we'll get a lot of those questions answered in the first half of this game against Georgia Tech. Clemson will beat them for sure, and I actually think Clemson will end up blowing them out. Now, in week 2, you play Furman, one of those kind of nothing games we were talking about a minute ago. Everybody schedules these. I'm not going to sit here and knock Clemson for playing Furman. Everybody does it. Even those teams up north that cry about teams down here doing it, they do it too. Check Michigan's non-con schedule and try to find a Power 5 team on it. Here's a hint. Yeah, you won't find one. But anyway, shout out to Ohio State too for playing people like Miami of Ohio, Toledo, and shit like that, and then crying because somebody in the SEC played the Citadel or whatever you want to cry about. That's all they do up there. All they do up there in the Big Ten is cry about what we do down here. I don't get it or understand it, but anyway, that's not the point of this video. You'll beat Furman. Y'all got to stop letting me get off track here. I apologize for that. Anyway, up next, on the road at Wake Forest. And before I go through this next stretch of games here, just look at this next stretch of games here. Look at these 4 games. On the road at Wake Forest, home against NC State, on the road at Boston College, on the road at Florida State. 3 out of these 4 games are on the road, right? 3 of these 4 opponents might be ranked. 2 will definitely be ranked. I think Wake Forest and NC State are top 25 teams. I think Boston College is borderline top 25. Florida State's not very good. But anyway, it is on the road, though. So you got a 4-game stretch, all conference games. 3 of the 4 are on the road. 2 or 3 of them are going to be ranked opponents. I don't see Clemson winning all 4 of those games. I'm just going to come out and tell you. Even if Clemson's offense is what Clemson fans are hoping it will be. The quarterback is playing way better. The offensive line is playing way better. This is a difficult stretch of games to navigate, and it's hard to go undefeated. It's hard to go 12-0. I've done an Alabama preview already. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out. There's a playlist on my channel of all the teams I've done so far on these prediction videos. I don't have Alabama going undefeated. I find it hard to believe that Clemson's going to go through this 4-game stretch here without a loss. Now, the hard part is trying to figure out which of these 4 games they might lose. And I'll be honest with you, these aren't the 4 hardest games on the schedule. At Notre Dame is going to be tough. Hosting Miami at the end of the season is going to be tough. It's not any one of, it's not that I don't, look, Clemson can beat all 4 of these teams. They can beat Wake, they can beat NC State, they can beat Boston College, and they can beat Florida State. It's not that I think they're not better than any one of those 4 teams. It's the fact that they play these 4 games in a row. They're all conference games. 3 of them are on the road. If you go back and look at the games Clemson has lost in the regular season over the last few years, you'll find one thing in common. They don't lose at home. Clemson hasn't lost a home game since 2016, and they lost that by 1 damn point to Pitt. So they don't lose at home. So if we just go ahead and assume that for this year as well, then that means they're most likely beating NC State. Now, to be honest with you, I think NC State is probably the best of these 4 teams. Wake Forest, NC State, Boston College, and Florida State. I think NC State is probably the best of those 4. But you can't find no Clemson home losses anywhere unless you go all the way back to 2016, so I'm not going to try to find one here. So I think you get the win at NC State, but I think this will be a great game and a tough game. NC State's going to be really good this year. I know Clemson fans in particular have some sort of a beef with NC State lately. They don't like the coach over there, Dave Doran. I think he's done an okay job with what he's able to get at NC State. I mean, it's not like NC State is, this team with 100 years of amazing football history. NC State, they've had a few good years. They seem to have a ceiling they hit and can't get any higher. I think Clemson fans are kind of banking on that for this year because I think NC State has the potential to be really, really good. I just can't pick Clemson to lose at home. Sorry, can't do it. I think Clemson beats NC State. Now, at Wake Forest, okay, Wake Forest might have the best offense in the ACC. Last year, they scored 60, 70 points a game. I mean, they just lit it up. Their defense is absolutely horrendous. How bad is their defense? Well, their defense is so bad that even though they had an amazing offense scoring 60 or 70 points a game, they couldn't beat Clemson last year. Clemson's offense was non-existent last year. Clemson's offense was on a friggin' milk carton last year. They were putting out APBs all over the place. Have you seen Clemson's offense? Have you seen it? No. I mean, the Tatermans was going crazy, no offense, and still managed to beat Wake Forest because Wake Forest defense is just that bad. Their defense is so bad that Clemson's offense was able to score on it. So even if Wake Forest offense is as good as it was last year, which I don't think it will be, they're not beating Clemson. I know it's on the road, but I don't see that happening. I mean, I think Clemson beats them. That puts them at 5-0. That leaves the 2 road games at Boston College and at Florida State. Well, I've already done a Florida State version of this video. So if you've seen my Florida State prediction, then you know I don't think Florida State's beating Clemson. So the only thing that leaves me with is Boston College. I think Clemson loses on the road at Boston College. And before you laugh that off, go look at some of Clemson's losses over the last few years. Like I mentioned, they're going to be on the road teams that aren't very good. I remember them losing to a pretty bad Pitt team. I remember them losing to a pretty bad Syracuse team. It happens. In Boston College, they've got a good quarterback in Phil Jurkovec. I think Boston College will be a good team, not good enough to win the ACC, but they might be the 3rd or 4th best team in the ACC. Again, am I confident that Clemson is going to lose this game to Boston College? No, I'm not confident at all. I look at Clemson's schedule, to me, and it screams 11-1, right? Now, they could go 12-0 if the offense ends up being more like what it was in 2019 and 2020 and 2018 and less like what it was last year, which was horrible. It's possible Clemson could go 12-0, but it's hard for anybody to go 12-0, right? So, again, saying they're going to go 11-1 is one thing. Trying to figure out where that loss might be, that's something else altogether. Obviously, I think they're going to beat the fruit. They'll beat Syracuse. This is Dino Babers last year. I don't see how Syracuse keeps him. I've done a Notre Dame version of this video as well. So, again, if you've seen that, you know I think Clemson gets the win. I do think this is Clemson's most difficult game of the year, on the road at Notre Dame. Clemson has a bye week before the Notre Dame game. That obviously helps. This is a little over halfway through the season. Everybody's banged up and has a few injuries here and there by this point in the season. You get an extra week to try to heal some of those players up before you have to go on the road to Notre Dame. And because you have the bye week, of course, you get 2 weeks to prepare for Notre Dame. I think all those things are huge. We have DABO Swinney, who's been doing this forever, versus Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. This is his first year, right? So I think Clemson goes on the road and beats Notre Dame. Clemson lost on the road at Notre Dame back in 2020, the COVID year, the last time they played there. And then, of course, Notre Dame and Clemson had the rematch in the ACC title game, and Clemson won. But I think you go on the road and you beat Rudy, still just sitting on the one loss. Louisville, I've been waiting on Louisville to have a decent season, it seems like, for the last 3 or 4 years. Well, really since Lamar Jackson left, and they keep letting me down. Their offense looks exciting, and it's fun to watch. 1 week, you watch it, the next week they turn the ball over 8 times. They look like they don't know what they're doing. It's just, it's got to be frustrating to be a Louisville fan right now, at least a Louisville football fan. But I think Clemson gets the win. Again, that's a home game. And go looking for Clemson home losses. They're hard to find. The last one was in 2016, so hard to pick Clemson to lose a home game to a terrible team like Louisville. I've already done the Miami version of this video as well, so it's no surprise, but I think Clemson beats Miami. This is the second toughest game on the schedule, I think. Maybe NC State. Notre Dame will be tough. NC State will be tough. This Miami game will be tough as well. I think Miami's going to have a really, really good team this year. Tyler Van Dyke, he might be the best quarterback in the ACC. He was unbelievable last year. Now, he didn't get the start till like week 5, 6, or 7, something like that. He only played the last half of the year. But if you compare his numbers to the last half of the year, they're very similar to the C.J. Stroud numbers and Bryce Young numbers of the last half of the year, too. He put up some ridiculous numbers at Miami in the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season. Outdueled Kenny Pickett in a win over Pitt last year. For Miami. So the Tyler Van Dyke is really, really good. They're excited. New coaching staff, Mario Cristobal, some new energy down there, sort of a new attitude down there. And if I'm Clemson, I'm beating Miami now because, whatever you think about Mario Cristobal as an on-field coach or a developer of talent or whatever, you cannot deny the guy's ability to recruit. He's an absolute monster when it comes to recruiting. And it's not just him. His entire staff is filled with elite-level recruiters. So wherever you think Miami is right now, talent-wise, they're about to be a lot higher in year 2, year 3, year 4 under Mario Cristobal. I mean, look at the recruiting right now for 2023. This is going to be the best recruiting class Miami's had in a long, long time. And it's only going to get better under Mario Cristobal. So Clemson's got to start stacking up these wins against Miami now because I think they're going to get harder and harder to beat as time goes on here over the next 2 to 3 years. But I do think you beat Miami. I do think you beat Miami this year at home. Possible rematch in the ACC title game. I could see Miami. My prediction for Miami, you can go back and watch it if you want. I had Miami at 10-2 with losses on the road to Texas A&M and on the road here to Clemson. If that's the case, Miami probably gets Clemson in a rematch in the ACC title game. We'll see. And then the last game of the year, South Carolina. Look, nobody on planet Earth, including Clemson fans, has picked on South Carolina more than I have over the years here on YouTube. They are going to be better this year than they were last year, but their record is going to be about the same and maybe even a little bit worse. I don't blame them for being excited about Spencer Rattler. Hell, I don't even blame them for being excited about Beamer, okay? They haven't had a lot to be excited about in their entire existence. I mean, they haven't even won a conference since 1969, and that was the ACC. And even that year, they lost 4 games. They just, you know who they are to South Carolina. They haven't scored a touchdown against Clemson since 2019. They've been blown out year after year. Maybe this is a closer game than what we've seen the last couple of years. Maybe, but again, it's a home game for Clemson. I can't pick Clemson to lose to their in-state rival South Carolina at home. I mean, Clemson's a way better team. They're way more talented. They'll have a lot more to play for at this point in the season. You know, if they do have a loss somewhere, even if they've locked up a trip to the ACC title game, if they do have a loss, they can't afford to take a second one. So even if they're, if they happen to be 10-1 or something when they play this game, they're still going to give it their all. And it's just hard to imagine it's hard for me to imagine Clemson losing to South Carolina. So there you go. I've got the Taters at 11-1. 11-1 with a loss on the road at Boston College. And look, like I told you, I'm not very confident they lose that game. Why did I pick that game? Well, I explained it earlier. I think this is a difficult stretch of games here between NC State and Florida State, right? NC State, Boston College, Florida State, and Wake Forest. Those 4 games. 3 of them are on the road. They're all conference games. It would not surprise me at all to see Clemson lose one of those games. You know, I think NC State's probably the best in that 4-game stretch there, but you get them at home, and Clemson just doesn't lose at home, so you can beat them. Wake Forest defense is just horrendous, so I think you beat them. And Florida State's still a couple of years away, so that really only left on the road at Boston College. They do have an experienced quarterback in Phil Jurkovec. And, again, if you look at some of the regular season losses Clemson has had over the last few years, they're all on the road. And they're all pretty average teams, which is what I think Boston College will be, maybe the 4th or 5th best team in the ACC. So that's kind of my reasoning for that. But in terms of, am I confident? Am I going to bet? Am I willing to bet $100 right now that Boston College beats Clemson? No, I'm not. And I wouldn't be shocked if Clemson went 12-0 either. But that's my prediction for the Clemson Taters 2022. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Do you think Clemson's going undefeated? Let me ask you this. Who will be the starting quarterback when Clemson plays NC State in Week 5? Who will be the starting quarterback when Clemson plays South Carolina at the end of the season? Let me know. Do you think DABO makes the switch this year? Do you have confidence and faith that DJ Uiagalelei is going to get a lot better and keep the job all year? Let me know down below. Anyway, I appreciate all of you watching, and have a good morning, too.